Okay, so let's go with the next speaker, which is Joao Cardoso.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Jose, Diego, and Marta for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here working with Angue and sharing the project we are running, a LIFE project, Resland, here in Cascais, Portugal. So I'll share the presentation. All good? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much once again. So Cascais, it's a municipality right near to Lisbon, and 1/3 of the municipality, it's a protected area. And unfortunately, wildfires has been quite present in the landscape. Nevertheless, this issue of wildfires has always been seen in the silos. So there's the fire departments, there are the forestry departments, and then the conservation departments. And unfortunately for last years, actually colleagues didn't have the capacity to integrate all this approachment. So this LIFE project tries to identify the circumstances that came up with the fires and linked it and try to understand with the past and the soil evolution, population, and naturally, in the end, the impacts with climate change. So LIFE Resilient Landscape, the purpose is to adapt and promote this landscape as a fire-wise landscape, and we will see this in the short moment. So just to give you a glimpse, the project runs in the area of the Sintra Cascais Nature Park, and it's about 2,600 hectares with the budget, and we started in 2023 in October, so we are just in the beginning of the project. For those who don't know where we are, so Portugal, we are 30 kilometers from Lisbon. This is our protected area, and as you can see, it's a very peri-urban area. So it's a nature park, UNESCO landscape, but it's a very urbanized area somehow. The park came up in the 80s just to stop the pressure from the tourism and the dwellings. In nowadays, and especially after COVID, this is very used for people to walk, nature tourism operations, but also for active recreation, outdoor sports, and so there's a lot of people using this area. So this is also a problem regarding wildfires and safety of the communities. So I will speak roughly about land use evolution, the fire we have, the landscape that we want in the future, and now how are we going to do it. And this is very interesting because we had a huge fire in 2018. It burns 500 hectares more or less. And if in terms of scale for forestry, 500 hectares is not a very big fire. Here in such a peri-urban area, it's a very big fire. So people were afraid, and houses, they didn't burn, but the fires reached the villages. So that's when we started to go deep on try to understand the missing links, trying to understand what can we do and why are fires a threat to our population. So one of the topics, obviously, and already Guillermo mentioned, it's land abandoned and farming activities abandoned also from the landscape. As you can see here, it's a late aerial photography in 1948. All those small mountain villages were farmed. Well, it's not very productive farm. It's small patches of land, but these lands provide somehow some, they avoid shrub to grow over and not being grazed. And this is very important for prevention of the fires. And you can see here also from the late 50s, 60s, and 2008, trending on soil occupation. Farm just ended, and the scrubland and forestry take over the land. And obviously, this has huge impact in biomass production and vulnerability of the landscape for wildfires. So no more farmers, no more shepherds. Forests somehow ended up to take over, but mainly shrubs, because we are here in the Atlantic, in the nature area, and shrubland, it's a very, very high growing layer. So for us, we cannot change no more the land use. We can try to model it, but not as we had in the late 50s. Another challenge was to try to identify what type of fires. Are there any particular circumstances that fire occur? So one of the main focuses, we have this mountain. So Sintra Mountain runs east from west. It goes from Cabo de Roca, the western point of Europe, at 0 meters to 500 meters. So it's a mountain that protects Cascais from the northern winds with more moisture, and this moisture is retained by the mountain on the northern in Sintra. So in the southern part of the mountain, we have more dry weather and windy, and there's a variation of precipitation and pressure that makes our summers very dry, with having the Foehn effect, very dry and very windy. Allied with the topography, this makes very fast wind corridors, and this is naturally have huge impacts in the fire. As you can see here, the landscape that we have in our territory, it's a wildfire-made landscape. And this is very important, because when we look in terms of ecology, we look in terms of plants, we look in terms of soil, we need to take in consideration that the fire is the first herbivorous. So he models all the landscape already. And if you look a little bit deep, you'll see there are different shapes of the fires. And this is connected with topographic fires, where the wind is the driver, and there are convective fires, where it's the biomass, it's the driver. And so the idea is, how can we intervene in these areas, different wildfires typologies? How can we work without not to wipe out the fire, but to mitigate the intensity or severity of the fire? And obviously, we need to understand how the behavior of the fire. So we have a topographic fire. If the wind is the driver, it's not making patches of 100 meters or 500 meters that can avoid the fire to grow in the landscape. We need wider areas. And if the driver is the vegetation, then yes, you can make some cleaning of the woods, of the landscape, and to stop the fire, to have so major impacts. So, and this for us it was very interesting. We had a lot of meetings with firefighters to really understand the past, and to collect all these old data to allow us to and then understand how can we tackle this issue. And the idea is, how can nature, in particular habitats, can themselves provide self-protection to the intensity of severity of the fires. So obviously we need to have some kind of vision. What type of landscape do we want? Because the landscape we have seen now, and considering the baseline shifting syndrome, the landscape we are looking now, it's already a wildfire-made landscape. So what are our visions to the future? Obviously, we want this landscape to be resilient, because the fires will always be present here. So the more restored habitats, the more resilient these habitats are, the more capacity they have to reproduce after the fires. And this is what we've seen already. If we have an 80 species with the Mediterranean plants, they naturally have the capacity to reproduce and come up very fast. Obviously, invasive species is a problem, a big problem. So we want to protect these areas and remove and try to control these invasive species. and obviously we all need to balance the use of the landscape with recreation and many other tourism activities. But for that to happen, we need to promote safety, and we need to advise people how to behave in the forest and how to use this nature park. And one of the major problems in Portugal is also related to private owners. So in Portugal, the majority of the property it's private. Here in these 2,600 hectares, half of it's private owned. And so we are trying to make an example on the forest owned by the government and for the municipality. And with that purpose, to attract the private owners to come along and make this integrated management approach. Nevertheless, it will be very, very difficult to make it a success. So this is just a scheme about how to find out the best way to control or to mitigate wildfires. So we have this kind of which type of wildfires do we have, which type of habitats can somehow unnaturally reduce the intensity or severity of the fires. And that's was the pillar of the LIFE project. How can we, managing the habitats, create opportunities to control, to combat, to detain the fire, or to reduce their intensity or velocity? So all the purpose of the project, it's mainly regarded to habitat management and how can they, if restored, control the wildfire. I would like just to focus one aspect here when we talk about, and Guillermo already mentioned it, and it's interesting because we have obviously Portugal and Spain, the same kind of forest and the same kind of issues. And obviously for some years, we just ignore the rule of the herbivorous, large herbivorous in the landscape. And in terms of ecological postulates, we learn about succession of series, phytosociological series, but somehow we forgot the animals. And so while we are looking at animals as a kind of a management tools, different animals have these different tasks and different way of grazing. So browsers, mixed browsers, and grazers. So they have in the mixed, they have the opportunity to control and make stress in specific part of vegetation. So we are looking at all these kind of possibilities in terms of policy that we at European scale and at national scale have. We are looking at the mix of different animals, and we will speak about this later. How can we mix these animals, taking in consideration the habitats management impacts, but also taking in consideration their characteristics in terms of grazing, and also look at the landscape, what type of landscape we have, and where and which animals can be added to these places so we have in the final reduce the intensity or the frequency of the fire. So namely, we look at the topography and we look at the weather. We see the animals have opportunity, which animals can be reintroduced here, and how can we mix in these different patches of vegetation, and the final outcome will be this reduction of damage and intensity of frequency, as I already mentioned. So this is our habitats that we have. We organize the habitats in different units. So we overlap habitats and fire recurrency to understand where can we actually intervene to detain the wildfires or reduce the wildfires impact. And we came up with these kind of management models. And so these management models will be implemented in different areas of the landscape, in particularly where fires occur with more intensity or they are more prone to occur. But we will do it not business as usual, just cut it and clean it with huge impact in the landscape. We will reintroduce nature restoration and habitats restoration so nature can for itself respond positively. Naturally, one of them is we have a lot of small rivers and creeks that cross from the mountain to the sea. Some of them, and mainly in the 50s, they were reshaped by man. So the sides of the small creeks were used for farming. So naturally, one of the purposes is to retain this water on the mountain and avoid the water to run very quickly for the sea. And obviously, with fire recurrency, we have a lot of them invaded by exotic species and a lot of soil loss regarding the high speed, so hydrologic impact and erosion. So what we will do, and we're already doing, is take down these channelized small creeks with stone walls, and we want them to do some kind of beaver dams and retain this water in the mountain, and with this try to raise the humidity of the soil, contain the soil loss, and try to reestablish the riparian gallery. This is one of the examples that we have already broken down those walls from the rivers, and the river when this was taking 4 or 5 years a day, sorry, and we see the river already floods out of the channel, and it's flooding an area that we prepare with small terrain modeling, and it works as a sponge, so that it retains the water in the soil and infiltrates and allows the underground baseline to come up. And so this is very important for riparian galleries to be established and giving more moisture to the soils, and those small creeks would also work as fire breaks. Naturally, very important, already mentioned already, it's the native forests. So if you have these kind of old forests with the capacity to recruit new plants, it's the more powerful tool we can have to take down the wildfires problem. So the wildfires come, they can have impact in these nature forest, in these native forests. Nevertheless, especially oak forests, they are quite prepared to rapidly recover and establish themselves. And sometimes these fires can be also very beneficial for this. And we have this concept of, and already also shown here by Jose, the idea of take down this monocultural forests and become much more natural and diverse. And this is more resilient to diseases, but also to wildfire restoration process with different patches of different forests. And so we have this kind of a genetic seed bank where we produce more than 60 or 70 species, from shrubs to trees, but also to herbaceous. Some of them are Lusitanic endemic species. And that's where we are trying to plant to create the more diverse landscape area, and this more prepared to the fires. We also have dunes, and this is very particular in this landscape, in this nature park. We have different habitats. One of them is the parabolic wind corridor. And this is very interesting to study how dunes establish gray dunes, for instance, that we are working here. If they are not overpopulated with pines or acacia species, they can be just by themselves fire breaks. And we saw this in 2018. The fire started on the mountain, but some part of the dunes were covered with pines, and so they were the channel for the fire to keep on going. But now we are taking down these pines and leaving only the juniperus. This is an habitat of juniperus in this patch, mosaic patch land, and this allows to restore this habitat, the gray dunes habitats, and allow a better nature values and avoid the fires also to spread. So you can imagine here on this picture on your right, the fire, for instance, in 2018 started on the top of a mountain at midnight, more or less, and at 2 a.m. was already here in the dunes. So you can imagine the speed of the wind and the difficulty to tackle this issue. So the dunes if they are this kind of gray dunes, they can also be fire breaks. Around the mountain, we have a lot of limestone, and this is very, very difficult because no soil quality to have big forests. So the shrubland, it's the most continuous area, about 250 hectares of shrubland. So we need to promote somehow some patches, some mosaics, to not only to benefit habitats, different habitats, but also to make some natural wildfire breaks. That's why we are working in this model to create these patches, and we will do it using different strategies. Some of them, this is a model. So at the beginning, we will use prescribed fire or machinery, and then we introduce animals, and then we will keep on doing this to reduce the total volume of biomass and create these kind of patches of mosaic. But the animals will do the long-term management. So man will do the first steps to enter, because some areas the animals can enter. There's a very, very dense bush of Quercus coccifera, Kermes hoak. And so we will do the first steps, and the animals will do the rest. Obviously, the mix of animals we have to work. Here, we will work with cows, wild cows. This is Maronesa from the mountains. And we will use some horses, wild horses. And so the purpose of this is to take advantage of the different feeding patterns of these animals, and for them to eat all layers of vegetation, not only herbaceous, but also shrubland. And so we will change the animals and the rotation scheme from one patches to the other to maintain these differences, and to allow, if necessary, facilitate the combat with the firefighters. So in this particular area, we are using donkeys, Miranda donkeys. They are from the northern part of Portugal, very similar to Zamora donkeys. And we are using roe deers. They are very, very important browsers for our woods. And the donkey is a mix feeder. And then we are using Soraya horses. It's an endangered species, so we are also trying to protect domestic biodiversity. And there are only about 250 around the world. They are Portuguese native species, and the red deer. And so the concept is the mix of these herbivores will help us to maintain the long-term, the low biomass fuel. In some areas, we will promote the forage crops and natural pastures, again, to maintain this horizontal discontinuity and the landscape mosaic, but also this will help many other species like rabbits, herons, and partridges to use the places, and obviously birds of prey. And these patches would also have some kind of cultural aspect in terms of the landscape. And we will use the same kind of opportunity in this particular area. We'll take also the idea to step by step taking over some of the patches that are completely overgrown by shrubland, and open these patches, and somehow reintroducing again the animals. This area in particular will be in the mountains, so we use different animals. So if you have the lowlands, we use specific animals. In the mountains, we will use different animals. And this different rotations. In this area here, we are using, it is on the top of a mountain, so it's between the 300 and the 500 meters. So we choose different animals, adapt to the mountain. We have Garranos from Jerez, like in Spain you have it in Xerez also. And we have the Maronesa cow. So they are both animals used to work on the mountains, when the slopes, and the same kind of habitat. So it's better for them to rapidly adapt to the diets, and they have this kind of pressure on this vegetation. And obviously, there's many other ecosystem services they can provide, even some recreational cultural aspects, because these have huge impact. And it's very interesting when we explain the role of these animals in the landscape for the tourists and the visitors. They understand they're more than just the animals. They have a lot of tasks they can provide in the landscape. And finally, natural pastures. It's areas that were cultivated, and they are very close to the seashore and the cliffs. Very difficult places to do whatever you want, because you have the winds from the ocean, and mainly this is the kind of landscape that you have, matus, marrocal or barrocal, as you can understand. So after the fire, we have huge problems with invasive species. This is opportunity after the fire. It's opportunity for the invasive species to come and to take over, and we will do different approach here. These are very areas where the fires get very high speed, and they can change very drastically the way we are managing the wildfire. So in the top of these hills, we will do some open patches, and we will work with the goats, with a herd of goats. We are training these goats for more than 1 year now. I think they are ready. And so we will do some kind of pastoralism movement with electric fence. Then they will change from the top of a hill to the other top of a hill in the beginning of the fire season. So in the next months, we will take the goats there and try to keep on these open areas cleaned of vegetation, to give opportunity to the firefighters to position themselves in terms of wildfire prevention or to solve the wildfire issue. And so this is the same idea. The goats will come, and we will have this kind of rotation on the landscape. And the most important is we are doing this wildfire activities, and it's not easy in this area because of the Kermes hoax. So it gives us a lot of troubles for them to really get some ignition and temperature to take over. But the most important, it's after the wildfire, in the 1 year later, we will bring on the animals and then use them to maintain the open patch. And this allows us in the future to create this opportunity of mosaic. Obviously, this has huge impact also in biodiversity. Many other species just appear suddenly, and we're talking about orchids, we talk about annual plants, and obviously this is very important for insects and for birds. And so we are using this kind of tools and approaches. So we replicate this in our areas. So here are the areas that are managed by the municipality. Some of the areas are government areas, but we have this kind of protocol, so we manage integrated. And naturally, the LIFE project intends to then replicate it with the private owners, so we are in contact with them. Obviously, the fire, when it comes, it goes everywhere, depending on the vegetation. So definitely we need to invite these private owners to come and to let us manage the land in an integrated area and approach. And we are showing and making some case studies about what are we doing. So this last year was mainly to work with the stakeholders, invite them to visit, doing some workshops, and to tell people what we really would like to do, and now they can take part of it in the future, to prevent this landscape to become much more resilient landscape. And that's all for now. Thank you very much for your time. Jose, the floor is yours. Thank you.